to the first of the Analog Astronaut Field Notes series. To give you a little background on what that is, so Ryan Kobrick, Simon Proctor, and I have a company called Flight Ready Systems. And the educational arm of our company is the Analog Astronaut Facebook page, which I know some of you have been on there already and interacting with the community. But the purpose of having that educational arm is to really support the analog astronaut community. And by analog astronaut, we're talking about people who are interested in or participate in space simulated activities. So for example, living in habitats, which I'll be talking about in a little bit, simulating Mars or moon missions, zero gravity flights. I know Martine joined the weightless, practicing weightlessness in flotation tanks, all kinds of stuff like that. So really it's to help support the community and globally support the community that are interested in these topics. And so we decided, especially now in this new world we're in over the last week, we've decided to go to having a web series, which we had talked about for the last few months, trying to get something like this started, but now's the time. So this is the first of those sessions, and each one we're really thinking about the intersection of space life and Earth life and how they work together, and lessons learned from space analog activities, but also how those can be applied on Earth. And so to get us, actually just before we get started, we have a quick disclaimer. Just want to put this out there. This will go for all of our sessions going forward, but we really want to make sure that this is just an opportunity for us to share our experiences, not to be diagnosing or providing therapeutic advice. Just kind of want to put that out there. This is just us sharing our experiences, yeah, just we'll be sharing what we've learned from those experiences. Okay. All right. So, hi. If I don't know you already, I am Erin Bonilla. I am an analog astronaut myself. I've participated in a few analogs, which I'll talk about here shortly. I am this Chief Operating Officer of Flight Ready Systems, who is helping host this event. And I'm a space artist. I have a career in art for, I don't know if I want to say how many years, but getting near 20 years at this point. So anyway, if you're interested in connecting with me outside of this webinar series, you can reach me at ebon, E-B-O-N, in flight. And that is on Instagram and Twitter. And my presentation is on positivity in a time of chaos. So one of the things that I really focus on, and I've focused on in my research in the past, is positive psychology and looking at things through a positive lens, and how we can use that to help us grow or transform, but also to just maintain a positive outlook on life and not find ourselves becoming victims to the stresses that we're surrounded by. So this particular presentation is on lessons learned from a particular Mars simulation that I participated in January, the SENSORIA mission, which some of you may have heard about already. But there are so many other, I have so many other lessons learned from other space analogs, but this one in particular will be focused on the SENSORIA mission. Before I jump into that, a little bit of my background. My analog astronaut experience, I participated in the SENSORIA mission. I am also a graduate of the Possum Academy, their introductory course. I have done a zero gravity flight, and I learned from a company in the UK and on how to run Everest base camp treks, and then went on it with them. And then I'm also a wilderness first responder. All of those aspects of, all of those activities feed into what an analog astronaut is or does. I'm also an entrepreneur. I mentioned the Chief Operating Officer of Flight Ready Systems, but I also have a design company, which I've had for a very long time, where I'm the creator and co-founder of Harbinger Creative. And the space artist part of me, some of you may also have seen some of my illustration work, especially lately. I've been sharing a lot. I worked at NASA headquarters as a digital strategist, project manager, and then senior graphic designer there. And so that gave me time to really hone in on my artwork as it relates to space. So the SENSORIA mission was the first mission. So in January of this year, we had the first mission in the SENSORIA program, which is going to be a series of missions coming up. And the purpose of those missions are to support women in aerospace and really to push women to the forefront of aerospace research and training. And this mission in particular, we wanted it to be an all-female crew. And I was the vice commander and medical officer on the mission. And okay, so that's the mission itself. Now, before I dive into the actual experiences while we were in the mission, I did want to talk a little bit about what positive psychology is. So positive psychology is the study of the strengths and virtues that enable us to thrive. I love that word, thrive. It has such a great positive feel to it. And some of the areas, this is not an exhaustive list, but some of the areas that fall under positive psychology are your happiness, positive thinking, and then personal wellness. And some others would be like, an example would be pleasure is another one. But really just thinking about all these different characteristics that we have and looking at them through this positive lens. So one of the aspects of the mission that really helped us keep a positive outlook. So when we were living inside the habitat, so it was a geodesic dome structure and about 900 square feet of space, 6 people living in this tight area, and we couldn't go outside. So it's a Mars simulation. So what we had to do was we lived in the habitat, but if we wanted to go outside, we actually had to put on these simulated spacesuits, which you see here, go into an airlock, go through depressurization, and then we could go outside. And never, when we were outside, we could never take off our helmets, scratch our faces, that kind of thing. And so it was kind of a stressful activity. I would say from the time we're getting ready to the time we're getting outside, that whole process it took about an hour, realistically, getting all the communications equipment working, that kind of stuff. But one of the great parts of going out and exploring and going on these extravehicular activities or EVAs was we had a chance to get outside. So we may not have been able to feel the wind on our faces because of the helmets that we were wearing. We did get outside and get sunlight, although it was a very, like you can see there's not a whole lot of vegetation in the area out there in Hawaii on a volcano. But it did give us a sense of being out in nature. And I don't know if anyone has heard of this term before, but nature deprivation, it means you're without nature. And as human beings, nature is essential for us to be at our best. And so being able to step outside and be in nature, even if it's not green plants everywhere, it did get us outside of this enclosed space and helped us to feel good and stay positive. Often when we came back from an EVA, we'd be all like super high energy, laughing, joking, and then, you know, and then we would calm back down, and usually we would be pretty tired at that point. But it did give us a chance to really like get that adrenaline going and get us feeling positive in a difficult scenario. So another way that we maintained positivity was the use of creativity and art. So all of us in the crew had different projects they were working on. Some were sewing. We had people playing instruments. We had photo shoots, many photo shoots while we were in there. And we used creativity to help us and to help inspire us to feel good. I know art therapy is a type of therapy that people will use to feel better and feel more positive. And so art was a tool that we used to help us in that scenario. And just to give it a little story, we had a significant amount of rain when we were there, which kept us from going outside on our EVAs, which would normally make us feel good. So we found ourselves, some of us were in the habitat for 8 days straight without getting a chance to go outside. And it's not like we were just stuck inside and could look out the window and see sunlight. We actually were stuck inside, and then you look out the window and it's like rain and clouds. Which was really draining, and we could feel it. All of us expressed it at different times during the mission. So what we did though was we came together on these different art projects and supported each other in these projects so that we could help get through those hard times. And then we come out of it with these cool things that we created, and we feel good about that. All right, and then socialization was actually really important. It sounds odd being that we were together all the time in this habitat, but in reality, we all had our own projects we were working on. We had to, you know, people were off in different rooms or, you know, focused on their computer. So it was nice to have these set times where we were getting together as a crew, and then just having fun, talking to each other, not about work stuff, not about research, just life stuff. And that was really important. And especially in our case, because we were doing a Mars simulation, we didn't have the opportunity to talk with our families at home in real time. So if you were on an actual Mars mission, there would be a communications delay. And so to simulate that in our mission, we had a 20-minute delay in each direction. So people would send an email, and we would get it 20 minutes later, then we would respond, and then they would get it 20 minutes after that. So our communication with the outside world was very limited. And so we as a crew really had each other to be that socialization component. So, you know, I don't have a picture of it here, but meal times were really important when we needed time together to bond as a crew, but also to keep each other's spirits up, address any issues that might be coming up, and then be able to move forward positively throughout the rest of the mission. So in these pictures, the photo on the left was, we had a movie night where we watched Contact, and that was a lot of fun. Everyone enjoyed that. And we actually had a few crew members who hadn't seen it yet, which was pretty exciting. And then on the right, it was just a few crew members sitting around the Invertegrow, which was a nice feature in the habitat where it was a hydroponic garden system that we didn't have to touch except to fill up water every now and then. but it added a nice light to the room. Okay, and then we had a daily dance party. We were initially we were like, okay, we're gonna do it at noon every day, and this is gonna happen. But what we found is we did our daily dance party when we needed it the most. And so when we found ourselves kind of like, ugh, like not feeling good, or just like, I don't know, tension is high, or somebody's frustrated with something, we were like, okay, time for a dance party. And someone would put on some music, blast it, and we'd dance around. We actually did a couple, I couldn't find any photos of it, but we did a couple actually out on our EVAs as well. So we're in lava tubes or out near on the lava fields having our own daily dance party. So I'm like laughing about it now because it got us up, it got us moving, it got us laughing because we're being goofy. Just really important to keep that positive outlook, especially like not taking things too seriously, being able to just like let it go. Like, yeah, we're all doing really serious research. It's a serious situation. There are risks with being there, but just like have fun while you're doing it. That's okay. And then honesty and self-care. This is really important. A very important lesson learned for me on this mission was I've done some activities that are like backpacking trips that are you're out for a long time, that kind of stuff. But I hadn't really been in this type of isolation before. And so one of the things that I did, and this is a part of my research as well, is the use of reflective practices. So journaling, or recording audio, or even art. You could be drawing, your reflection is a drawing, that kind of thing. But the purpose of it is to go back over your experiences and understand where you're at. And I kept a journal throughout the mission myself. And I realized the emails that I was sending back and forth with my family were also that opportunity to reflect on what I had been doing during the mission. And so it gave me a chance to internalize what was going on and how I was feeling. And then now that I knew that and I was aware of that, it gave me, then I could change if I was heading down a bad path, or say, oh, you know what, I had a really good day today and this is why. Then I can continue with that to keep myself feeling good and positive. And self-care, it's just making sure, like checking in with yourself and making sure that you're okay. And then being able to either go to your own methods to help combat any type of issues that might be coming up for you. Like for example, on the right side here, I have, I was reading Max Brooks' Zombie Survival Guide when I was in there, which was a nice tool for me when I needed to just go away and like read for a bit and learn good survival skills, which I realize might be coming in handy sometime soon. But yeah, it just was like a nice chance for me to step away and go inside for a little bit, refresh, recharge, so that I could come back the best version of myself for the crew and for myself later. And on the same topic, reflection, I think what's really important here is that we all think about, so I'm talking about our space analog, or my space analog experience, living inside this habitat. But in this changing world that we're in, those skills can actually be related back to normal life. So the way I was explaining it, these tools that I've learned through, being in that confined space, they've helped me grow. I'm a different person than I was when I went into that habitat, now that I've come out. And being able to look back on that and learn how you've grown is really important. That's a good life skill to have in any scenario. And I think it's very relevant now in the world that we've found ourselves in the last few weeks. So just thinking back on that kind of stuff. And then, so I did want to give, that went by fast, but there's 15 minutes. I did want to give Ryan, so Dr. Ryan Kobrick, a plug. He's actually going to give a talk next Wednesday at the same time on living in sim, countermeasures to aid living in isolation based on spaceflight and analog missions. So definitely join us again. I think we're going to be putting out a new Zoom link for that one. I think, yeah. So we'll definitely be putting out a new Zoom link. So check in with our Flight Ready Systems social media and or any one of us individually if you need to reach out. And Ryan's social media, if you want to reach out to him, is Rye in Space. It's at the bottom here on the screen. Okay, so why don't we open it up to questions? Sai, I know you might have seen some coming through.
We have Elizabeth was asking, saying that she's going to be doing a female MDR mission in November 2020. And so.
Sorry about that, Sai. I just was making it so people can unmute themselves now.
Oh.
So I had to toggle it a few times, but you're good now. You're live.
So just making that, Elizabeth, that you can reach out to us at Flight Ready Systems or Erin directly about what we've learned and things like that. One of the things that I wanted to ask is, how much does self-reflection impact how you live now?
Right. Can you hear me still, now that we've done the mutes? How does it affect me now? I have built self-reflection into every aspect of my life now. So this is a tool that I would say I've only learned over the last few years. And the reason I got to that is I was learning about, it's called transformative learning theory. But what it is, it's a step-by-step process on teaching, right? Like learning, the learning process that somebody goes through. But the idea with transformative learning is that you are guiding, as a teacher in that theory, you're guiding people through a potential transformation. It doesn't mean that you are going to force them to change, because that's impossible. Only you as an individual can choose to change. But what it does is it helps people to look back and learn from things, the experiences that they're going through. And so one of the main aspects of that learning theory is reflection. And I've built personally through all the space analog activities that I've participated in, I built an activity, like a pre-reflection activity, where before I went into the activity, I thought, okay, what do I think this is going to be? What are what are my assumptions about this? So like when I went on the zero gravity flight, I wrote down all these things like, oh, this is what it's going to feel like, and this is, how I'm going to feel. It's going to be similar to skydiving, and I had this whole idea of what it was going to be. And then I did it, and then I wrote afterwards a reflection on the experience that I just had. And that was great because it was totally different than my reflection beforehand. It felt different. It wasn't like skydiving. It was actually, now that I've done scuba diving, it's more like that, because you're just total weightlessness. You can't, there's no adrenaline. I'm not feeling adrenaline with it like I thought I would. But going through that process was super interesting. And each activity I did, and I went through that kind of pre-reflection and post-reflection, I realized I really don't have a good idea on what something is going to be until I've done it myself. And so, so now it's kind of built into the way that I think. I really think about stuff before I'm going to do it, and then take that time to look back on what I just did and reflect on it through art, through writing, through talking to people, whatever. It internalizes that experience that I just had. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to unmute yourself and ask away. We only have a few minutes left.
Sure, I have a question. This is Anne, and
Hey, Anne.
hi. I just have to ask about the food because, you know,
Yes.
that's kind of important. Did you feel like you were hungry a lot of the time, or did you enjoy what you came up with to eat?
Yeah, and actually, I'll answer this, and then I might toss it to you, Sai, to answer. But yeah, so the food that we ate, I was full a lot. There were very few days where I wanted to snack, and I realized through that process, I snack too much in real life. Because it was more habitual than like actually needing a snack. Because we were eating very full meals. Every meal had a rice with it or a quinoa with it. There were some days where Sai was doing a research project called Meals for Mars, where we were eating freeze-dried, pre-prepared meals, and we would rehydrate them or add water to them, and then eat those with rice or just standalone. But I very rarely was I hungry. I don't know, Sai, do you have any input there?
Yeah, food is an extremely important part of analog missions and space exploration and just humans and culture in general. I lived in the high seas habitat back in 2013 as part of the first crew. It was specifically funded by NASA to investigate food strategies for long duration space flight. And so thinking about how food has a positive role in our life, and culturally that feeling that you get when you sit around a table and you eat together and you share stories and family and all of these things that kind of are wrapped up in the culture of food, it plays in an analog situation or in isolation, what we're doing now. And so one of the important things, especially for astronauts, is not to get food. They get apathy towards food. When you go up into space, your physiology changes, and that means that the food that you eat doesn't taste the same. And as a result, you tend to not want to eat it, and then you eat less and all of those things. And so analogs are a great place to look at crew cohesion and food and how we can mitigate some of those things. And so, but it's really important to look at them because you're going on EVAs and stuff, the macronutrients and the micronutrients and hunger, and how, because you can be filled with food from a nutrition standpoint, but you might not be satisfied from a psychological standpoint. Mm-hmm. And that's really important. And and a lot of us might be experiencing that now. I notice that I'm eating stuff. I have my go-to snacks when I'm feeling a little stressed. And so that for me is salty chips kind of things, and peanut butter and chocolate or sugar. And so how many of you out there, raise your hand, give a shout out if you're snacking way too much on those things. So I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
I might have to do a Meals for Mars one of these in the future.
Oh, yes.
I think it's coming.
Are there any other questions?
No.
Okay, I want to give Erin a shout out. Thank you for being our first speaker in this series.
Thank you.
Yes.
There's a virtual class I learned. If you go down to reactions, You
Oh,
can
really?
click on this little thing, pops up on your screen. It's so.
I'm not
All right,
gonna
Erin,
find
any
it.
word?
Just, you know, to kind of come back to positivity and reflection, we're going to have time on our hands right now. And just really checking in with yourself and reflecting on how you're feeling, and maintaining a positive outlook. It's hard to do when, you know, there's no end in sight of what's happening, but if we can look ahead to the future and stay positive about what's coming, then it can help us stay positive and moving forward in this current situation that we're in. Yeah, that's how I feel. So good luck, everyone. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out to me personally.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.